The Road Home by Penstroke. Chapter 3. You hit a rock. Come on! A pool would be so awesome! Verity rolled her eyes as she, Fluttershy, and Rainbow Dash walked towards the Crystal Palace. Fluttershy had been helping her load a cart of supplies at Carousel Boutique when Rainbow flew in. At first she was being very helpful, even volunteered to pulling the heavy cart. Yet after several minutes of pleasantries, Rainbow's true purpose came to light. A purpose Verity shut down quickly. I'm sorry, Rainbow Dash, but we are remodeling a palace, not a playhouse. We can't just add a monstrosity. It's not a monstrosity, Rainbow argued, venting her frustration into the hits of the cart as she worked to keep pace with her unburdened friends. Using her magic, Verity began to construct a floating model of Rainbow's vision from the little sticks and leaves she was picking off the ground as they walked. You want us to construct a gargantuan pool with no less than 3 water slides, a 2-story diving board, a hot tub, an accompanying lazy river, and give it the capability to generate 5-foot waves? Don't forget to swim outside our bar, Rainbow said, an eager smile sprawling across her face as she looked up at the model. Rainbow? Rainbow! Verity's brow furrowed. She released her magic, causing the mousy assembled to scurry to the dirt, snapping Rainbow's attention back to the conversation. Rainbow Dash, it is a fine design for a water park, but it is highly inappropriate for a royal palace. I mean, maybe if Pinkie Pie was the one who became a princess, I could see it working. But one could expect her castle to be geared more towards such absurdity. But this is Twilight we are talking about. She enjoys the simple and the practical. Does she remember how much she loved the dress I made for her birthday? Well, then what about the ballroom? Rainbow asked. If Twilight is so simple and practical, why the heck does she need something like that? Because she is a princess. Whether she likes it or not, she is going to have to host parties from time to time, and a ballroom can serve multiple purposes, if you fill it with table, and then the ballroom can become a fine dining hall to greet the royal delegation. If you set up a string quartet, the room can play host to an elegant gala. Give it to Pinkie Pie, and we can probably imagine all the wild parties she would be able to host. Fluttershy picked up her pace a little, getting a single step ahead of Rarity, so she could look past her to see Rainbow. If it's any consolation, I think adding a guardian in the back is a lovely idea. Yeah, you could put it right next to the lake that's right beside the castle. Although, I have to agree with Rarity, the water slide is a bit much. Now, the swim up cider bar. Yes, it is an idea I would love to pursue, Rarity said, a smile of inspiration on her face. The smile, however, faded quickly. Unfortunately, we can't just start making changes to the grounds. The land where the palace grew was owned by the town. The mayor signed ownership to Twilight at Princess Celestia's request, but we don't know where the property lines are. If we just start building a garden nitty-bitty. Rarity turned away from Fluttershy to look at Rainbow Dash. Or if we break ground on a pool without knowing where the property ends, or in the town's horses, we can cause a lot of trouble for ourselves, the mayor, and for Twilight. After all, not every pony in town is happy having a sticky castle sprung out of nowhere near Ponyville. Yeah, I get it. No pool. Rainbow stuck out her tongue and blew a raspberry. I'm sorry you are disappointed, but we can return to the idea of a garden and perhaps a pool after we finish the palace's interior. Rarity says the trio turned to the road and led straight to the castle's front steps, where he could see Applejack sitting and waiting. Besides, Applejack would never agree. She said we've had enough work ahead of us to getting the castle ready. Rainbow's frown turned up, becoming the faintest smile. No, she say, have you all lost your minds? Cause the idea is a few apples short of a bushel. Fluttershy, Rarity, and Rainbow couldn't help but snicker at the recent steps of Twilight's capital. They looked to Applejack, who had gotten up from somewhere she was sitting and had come down to meet them. Rarity, are you a few apples short of a bushel? I thought I told you only to bring the essentials. Rainbow Dash couldn't contain herself. She snickered and grew into full-out laughter. She took her in her legs, hanging from the wagon's halter as he held her side. What's so funny? Nothing, Rarity said between a few tickles of her own. And I assure you, Applejack, I have only brought you to your senses. I have on my designs, including the ones I did previously. You never know when some of old work may provide new inspiration. I have paper, crayons, ink, pencil, and design taco, so I can flush out the details while every pony works on the broad strokes. Rarity pointed a few bits and bobs that stuck out of the cart, while Rainbow Dash unhitched herself and went over to Fluttershy, who was struggling to not join in the contagious laughter. Rarity spoke out all over this, keeping Applejack's attention on the cart. I have some fabric samples so I can compare them to the crystalline color. I have my small work desk. A man simply can't still to get his eyes on the floor. I must simply have something to hold my fabric samples as well. They can't lay about to get dirty. What about your couch? Applejack asked, pointing to the red canvas piece of furniture. First, it is a chaise lounge, not a couch. Second, this is major home remodeling. I imagine all of us will need some place to faint at one point, or at the very least sit down. Verity's horn began to glow. A levitation spell enveloping some of the lighter objects in the cart and carrying them towards the door. Now, are we ready to get started? Are the volunteers already inside? Nope. I haven't seen any other pony all morning, Applejack said. But what about the ponies from the Crystal Empire? Rainbow Dash asked as he wiped a tear from her eye, finally managing to calm her giggles. They were going to take the next train and spend the night in Ponyville. They should be here by now. Well, I haven't seen them. Hey, girls, do you hear something? Fluttershy asked, gingerly inserting herself into the conversation. With Rainbow's laughter now gone, the quartet could hear something on the wind. It was subtle, but growing stronger with each passing second. It sounds like singing, Rainbow Dash said, her ears swiveling to try and discern where the noise was coming from. Rarity nodded. Yes, and I do believe I also hear some instruments. Singing? Instruments? I don't know. Applejack walked past Rarity, focusing her eyes on the intersection at the far end of the road that led to the palace's front gate. The other three soon joined her, each looking on as the music grew louder. It had a strong, driving melody that was supported by the thumping of drums. At the far intersection, a few ponies rounded the corner and came into view. They were followed by others, marching and swaying and singing in time to the music. It was first just a few, a dozen or so, but more and more ponies came into view. There was no way to really count how many ponies were walking into the palace. The marching band the four mares heard at a distance came into view. We can make this castle a home! That band only marked the halfway point of the crowd. In the middle of it all, bouncing and laughing, was Pinkie Pie! She waved one hoof ecstatically at her friends. The four of them could only force smiles and give weak little waves in return. You said yesterday you was going to take an army, Verity said, her words directed at Applejack. Well, it looks like Pinkie Pie got you your army. Just get out some paper, you brilliant, Applejack replied. We're going to need to write names down. Boo! My little pony! What? That sounded like if this was a two-parter, that would be a perfect place to do the opening. The rocky pine forest mountains of the Rainbow Range stood stalwart as the train tumbled northward toward the Crystal Empire. Its cars were filled with ponies of every shape and size. Some rode on the train for business, making just another trip to the Empire. Others rode with great excitement and wonder. They watched the trees roll by the window, their anticipation spiking each time they thought they saw a glimmering glimpse of their destination. Those in the last car of the train found a trip home with family. Cadence Shining's royal car had been hitched to the back of the Morning Express. The clicks and clacks of wheels on rails was barely audible within the wells of the car, and that was for the best. For a great game of wits that was folding within. Nyx peeked over the rim of her glasses, before quickly focusing her attention back on her magic. 2 playing cards floated in her levitation spell, hiding her face away from the others at the table. The game had become mysteriously in her eyes. Without words being spoken about why, they had purchased 5 bags of jelly beans from the train station snack shop before boarding. Then, the moment they were on the train, Spike produced a deck of cards from their luggage. Now she, Twilight, Spike, Aunt Cadence, and Uncle Shining were locked in the battle of wits, luck, and bluffing. Playing cards, specifically Dodge Hold'em, was a tradition of the family to pass time on long train rides. It had started with Nightlight, Velvet, and Shining, and grew to include Twilight and Spike when they were old enough to understand how to play. Cadence was drawn in the moment she started dating, and now Nyx was the latest inductee. Raise, Twilight said, tossing a few more jelly beans onto the pile. Her winnings were substantial, the result of a system of rules and equations she had developed to beat her brother and father at their own game. Everyone else at the table had suffered varying degrees of loss. Shining had suffered the most, down to a final few beans, while every pony else had enough to last at least a few more rounds. Fold, Kane said before tossing her cards towards the discard pile. She would have likely been doing better, at least staying even with Twilight, if she hadn't been occasionally nibbling on Jelly Bean here and there. Spike played him with a pair of sunglasses on, claiming they were important to his strategy. It was nearly impossible to tell where he was looking, though it hadn't saved him from losing to Twilight. Still, after inspecting his cards for a few moments, Spike counted the correct amount of jelly beans and tossed them in the pot. Alcohol! Shining threw the last of the beans in, tossing it away as if resigning himself to his fate to being the last one out. That left Nyx in the hot seat. Did she call, fold, or raise? Sure, she understood the rules, but that was a part of the game that made it difficult. I was guessing about what your opponent had. Nyx glanced up from her cards again, looking to the 3 cards that had been laid out over the course of the round.
Here was an ace, a king, and 3 other numbers. I'll go.
She tossed the required number of beans onto the pile, which led to the final reveal. Twilight laid out her cards, showing she had a pair of kings, which worked with the cards on the table to make a 3 of a kind with an ace high. At just the sight of those cards, Spike tossed his onto the discard pile and brought his head to the table with a small thud. Shining, in stark contrast to Spike, grinned at the sight, turned over his 2 cards, revealing 2 aces. Twilight's jaw drawn open, while Shining wore a smug smile. His eyes moved to Nyx, still grinning as if what to come was such a formality. So, what do you have? Glancing down, Nyx double-checked her 2 cards before laying them out on the table. At first, it seemed like nothing but garbage. 2 random low-number cards. Shining even began to reach for his wings, and an oppressive pile of jelly beans. But Twilight used her magic to interfere with her brother's levitation spell. Wait! Look at her cards again! Shining did just that, and his grin slowly fell into a disbelieving O shape. Nyx's cards both bore the suit of hearts, joining 3 others that were resting on the table. She has a flush!
She has a flush,
Twilight said, levitating the pile over to Nyx. Nyx was wearing a huge grin, but it was less of victory and more of relief. She had remembered the rules correctly. A flush was stronger than 3 of a kind. She used her magic to pull the pile of beans a bit closer, and quickly began sorting them into flavors she liked and ones she didn't. She had been betting the ones she didn't like first, since she assumed they'd get to eat the jelly beans once the game was over.
Good job, Nyx,
Twilight praised, before smiling over at Shining.
And bad luck, Shining. Pocket aces and you got beat by a flush.
Tell me about it, Shining said, but he did so with a smile. He added his own cards to the discard pile, before getting up from his seat, and got up to the table to stretch. You better be careful, Twilight. With that luck, Nyx may unseat you as a family card shark.
I am not a card shark, Shining, despite what you may think,
Twilight says, began to deal the next set of hoof.
Yes, you're just an unassuming princess of friendship.
Kate snuck one of the more jelly beans into her mouth, tucked it in the corner where she let it slowly dissolve away.
Your humbleness just makes you a better card shark, in my opinion. And I've just proven that strategy ensures I take advantage of opportunities that present themselves. There's nothing wrong with that.
Ah, but there is something wrong. With your strategy, you don't take risks. Shining stood up from the table and moved behind Nyx. If you had gotten Nyx's hoof, you would have folded after betting the blind. The reason she won is because she stayed in and took the risk. I would even bet she wins all the beans. Shining leaned into Nyx, grinning as he kept his eyes on Twilight. Come on, Nyx. You can beat Twilight, right? Show her the risk taker so you can win against her strategy.
Nyx glanced back and forth between her mother and uncle, suddenly finding herself needing to pick a side. She then smiled, took off her glasses, and joined Shining in staring down Twilight with her true eyes. It was a sight that made Twilight giggle as she finished dealing the cards and picked up the 2 she had laid down herself. Alright, Nyx, just don't be disappointed if Shining's strategy...
A clatter across the top of the roof, like heavy hail, drowned out Twilight's words.
It was followed by a sensation of declaration as the royal train car slowed down.
Nyx rolled back onto her cushion, unable to catch herself while the jelly beans slipped off the table and scattered to the floor. The car then abruptly stopped, every pony and everything inside getting jostled forward as the loud pang of impulse assaulted their ears.
Is every pony okay?
Twilight asked, once everything had settled down and she was able to get her bearings. Moans and groans of assurance came from every pony.
Nick sat up in her cushion at the table. Feel the jelly beans lingering in her mane. Look! Shiny recovered just as quickly, and rusted key at his side. She reassured him with a wave of one forehoof, while she used the other to cradle her gravid belly. What happened? Nick asked. She looked around for her glasses, only to find they slid off the table and gotten smashed under Shiny's hoof. Spike, who clung to the table during the chaos, quickly got up from his seat and towards the couch that stood beneath one of the car's windows. Climbed up to it, opened the window, and stuck his head outside. We hit a boulder! He shouted back inside. The train hit a boulder? Twilight asked as he began to clean up the mess, gathering the playing cards and putting them back in their sleeve. Was there a rock slide? Pulling his head back through the window, Spike looked at Twilight. No and yes. What do you mean? It looks like there was a rock slide, Spike said, but the train didn't hit it. Then why did we stop? Cadence asked. Because we did hit it! Twilight frowned. Her eyebrows arched as she moved to Spike. You're not making any sense. Spike hopped down from the chair and moved toward the door. He opened it, stepped outside, and motioned for some pony to follow Twilight and Nyx. He following Spike as he led the pair a few steps away from the train, turning and pointing. Doesn't make much sense to me either, but it's hard to argue with that! Next to Twilight turned, their eyes following Spike's pointed claw until they were looking at the front of the car. There, the obvious results of a rock slide lay before him. The train had been chugging beside a cold cliff face. The tracks in the surrounding area were littered with small rocks, and a large boulder sat directly in the way. The royal car had slammed right into the rocks, yet the rest of the train was gone, as if only their car had been struck by the calamity. How is this possible? Twilight asked, her eyes scanning the area for some sensible explanation. You hit a rock. Twilight, Spike, and Nyx all turned, looking to the voice that Twilight found to all too familiar. A mare was navigating her way down the crumbled cliff face, hopping down from rock to rock with the agility of a mountain goat. She then landed on the grass, looking at Twilight with an emotionally flat face, and speaking with even flatter tones. It's a sedimentary rock, Modify said. Yes! I actually get to do Maud in an actual story without me just inserting her randomly! I've been waiting all day to do that. Oh, and we can't forget all those crystal ponies. I didn't recruit them, but Mimotaz must have really inspired her when she went to the Empire. They all seem super excited to help! Piggy Pie beamed. She and her friends had retreated to the castle, leaving the volunteers outside to mingle and recover from marching all across Ponyville. Honestly, it wasn't that hard. Rainbow sat at the table. Discord had made appear the previous day. The tea party patted a tablecloth and place settings had vanished, leaving only the cushions and the table. Rainbow turned to look down at her cushion, punching it with a hoof a few times as she continued to speak. I just had to mention how they'd be helping the brave and glorious Spike. After that, the whole Empire seemed ready to come down to Ponyville. Fireside peeked out the nearest window, looking at the sea of ponies outside. There's so many. I hope we don't have to turn away any. Some of them came so far, it would be rude to tell them they couldn't help. I'll do my best not to do that. Applejack looked over a list of all the volunteers. One Rarity had written up, after listening to Pinkie Pie rambled off where she had found the ponies and how many there were. Honestly, this kind of turnaround gives me hope we'll actually be able to pull this off. With this many ponies, we'll even be able to run the safes. There won't be an hour in the day when some point ain't working on this castle. Rarity smiled as she tucked away her writing supplies. That's wonderful to hear, Applejack. But even with shifts, there are too many ponies for you to organize all on your own. We all know you tend to suffer a little if you push yourself too hard. Also, I'll admit, I wouldn't mind taking a few volunteers that may flesh out the interior design. I was thinking about the same thing, Applejack said. I'm going to be focusing on the renovations, but there's a lot of other stuff that'll need to be done, especially now that we got so many volunteers. The first thing we need to worry about is housing. What, like building houses? Rainbow asked. Applejack shook her head. No, what I'm wanting is food, water, and beds. A lot of those volunteers came from out of town, and there aren't enough spare rooms in Ponyville to hold them all. We need a place where every pony can go when they're not working. We also need to think about feeding this army. Ponies can't work on an empty stomach. But where can we put so many ponies? Fireside asked. She was still looking out the window, trying to be inconspicuous as possible, as he just looked at all the ponies outside. She seemed uneasy at her host, just looking at the crowd.
What about if we put them in tents outside the castle?
Verity asked, taking the idea gingerly, as if not to be fully formed.
It could be something of a big campsite.
It wouldn't be a bad idea if we had a few hundred tents on hoof, Applejack said. But unless you've got a secret stand someplace, I don't think that's going to work.
Oh, I have an idea!
Pinkie Pie bounced in her seat, waving her hoof above her head, like a student eagerly wanting to be chosen by the teacher. A role that was left up to Applejack. What you got, Pikey?
Well, we need a big building with lots of empty space. A building where we can feed an army, and that's kind of close by. Well, I don't know about the rest of you, but I can only think of one piece that fits the bill. It's big, made of stone, and Twilight wants to turn it into a school. Of course! Nice stone castle.
Reggie got up from the table, moved over beside Fluttershy, looking out the window. Her vision, however, didn't linger in the crowd. Instead, she looked on the far side of Ponyville, to the quarries she would occasionally go hunting for gems. The seat of Nyx's throne during her brief weeks as Equestria's queen, Nightstone Castle, stood in the same place it had for the past year.
Half of Ponyville stayed in that castle while we were rebuilding the town after the monster attack,
Verity said, smile growing at the idea that took root in her head.
It easily has enough space for all the volunteers. Let's just have to ask the mayor if we can borrow it for a week.
Nice good thinking, Pikey, Applejack complimented. I don't suppose you'd be up for taking some of our volunteers and make sure everybody's somewhat comfortable?
Pinkie Pie smiled and brought one of her hooves in salute. Admiral Applejack, under my command, the hospitality platoon will keep that castle ship-shape. Every pony will have a bed and 3 square meals, and we'll just have nightly parties to keep morale high. It'll be one of my longest appointments at Ponyville's party planner, but I won't let you down. Just give me a few dozen soldiers, and I'll handle the rest.
Applejack nodded, smiling at Pinkie's enthusiasm. Take as many as you'll think you'll need. Well, the same goes for you too, Rarity.
What about me and Flutters? How can we help? Rainbow Dash asked. If you don't mind, Fluttershy, I'd like to have your expertise on the design team, Rarity said. You do have a wonderful knowledge of sewing, and your cottage has a very warm, homey feel that I would love to try and replicate in certain parts of the palace.
Fluttershy smiled and came away from the window.
I think I like that very much. And as for you, Rainbow, I need to talk with the Crystal Ponies first about what it takes to build castle walls. I bet it takes more than sweet words in a song. We're going to need somebody to organize a delivery team. They'll be the ones making sure we have supplies we need. Think you can put together a team like that?
Verity, under the power of my thoughts, nothing is impossible.
You bet I can,
Rainbow said. She swung her forehoof, intending to slam it down against the table for emphasis. The table, however, gave way under the blow. A large chunk tore off, sending Rainbow crashing to the floor with a noticeable thud.
Oh my goodness.
Fluttershy jumped out of her seat and flew over to the table, landing beside Rainbow.
What happened? I believe this is why Discord said he wouldn't be of any help to us,
Rarity said, picking up a chunk of the table that had broken away. Though it was not visible from the exterior, the wood of the table became filled with small air pockets, making it brittle. With just a small application of magic, Verity was able to break the small chunk of wood in half.
It seems this table from yesterday has been... what's the best word for it? Dissolving? Yes, it has been slowly dissolving in the presence of the palace's natural magic.
Rainbow picked herself off the floor, trying to rub away a sore spot in her foreleg.
Where is Discord anyway? I thought you wanted him to tell us how his distraction was going each morning.
I did tell me, Applejack said, pointing to a bit of her vein. There, a small corner of folded paper pushed into view. The origami pony wiggled from the previous day, wiggled and squirmed out of its hiding place. That thing started talking while I was waiting for the rest of y'all to get here. Said that Twilight and her family got on a train for the Crystal Empire this morning. And that Discord was going to make sure the trip there was going to be a long one.
What does he mean by that? Rainbow asked.
Yeah, probably something like replace all the coal on the train with brownies or something.
Ah, that sounds delicious!
Pinkie Pie said, finding a little as he was missing out on something amazing.
One more time, please, from the beginning,
Twilight said, rubbing her forehead. She and Maud were standing near in front of the royal red train car. The rest of the family were resting a few feet away from the tracks, eating lunch while using the bread spare from the car as a picnic basket. Twilight was pretty hungry herself, but first, she needed to properly understand how they ended up in their predicament.
There was a rock slide,
It started with smaller rocks. Those rocks hit the top of the train. I think one must have broken the coupling between your car and the rest of the train. Some of the small rocks also got caught in the wheels. They made your car slow down after it got uncoupled. Then the big rocks fell, and your car crashed into them. Maud explained it all in a very factual manner, as if something occurred that every other day. But how did the rocks fall? They fell like rocks.
Twilight groaned, shaking her head. No, what I mean is, how did the rock slide start?
Oh, I think that was me.
Maud reached into her dress, pulling out a small chunk of glassy, black rock with a subtle green shine.
I was surveying the rocks on top of the cliff when I found this. It's a piece of obsidian.
Twilight levitated the small, jagged stone in her magic, turning over a few times before depositing it back in Maud's hoof. And why does finding this make you think it caused a rock slide?
Everything started after I pulled it out of the ground.
Maud slipped a piece of obsidian back into the same pocket where she kept Boulder.
It's strange. The cliff didn't look like it was unstable. The obsidian wasn't common to this region either. Still, rocks are very mysterious. They hold the world's secrets in their sediments.
Twilight rubbed the bridge of her nose with her hoof, still not understanding how a huge chunk of cliff could fall by pulling a shard of obsidian out of the ground. Still, Maud explained what had happened the same way 3 times now. Twilight doubted she was going to get more information, so it was time to change topics. What are you doing all the way out here in Rainbow Range anyway? Is it part of your rock research trip?
I'm studying the local geology to see if it explains why the trees here burn in so many different colors. It is for my thesis.
Maud used her hoof to scoop up a small bit of dirt, rolling it around before slipping the sample into her other pocket.
So far, the results have been very exciting,
She said with the same enthusiasm she used to express her poetry. With Twilight looked to be almost none at all. Well, at least no pony was hurt. Twilight said as she turned and walked back toward her family. Maud followed in her wake, and soon the pair sat down to join the picnic lunch already in progress. So, how bad is it? Keynes asked before taking another bite of her sandwich. All the food had been prepared by Nightlight and Velvet, a travel lunch for all of them to enjoy, instead of buying food at the train station. Once we get rid of the rocks, everything should be fine. I think we just have to wait for the train to come back. I mean, they're bound to notice the royal car is missing sooner or later. We might even get lucky. Another train could come along and give us a ride.
I doubt that will happen,
Maud said. She took Boulder out of her pocket and set him down near one of the sandwiches, before taking a bite from one of the few pears that had been packed with lunch. Why's that? Nix asked.
The 12 train is the only one that uses this tracks. It stops at Lumberton before going to the Empire.
Maud took another bite from a pear, chewed it, and swallowed it before continuing.
The other trains take the newer tracks on the west side of the mountain. It's faster.
And the number 12 only runs once a week? Shiny says he rubbed his forehead. There were protesters from Lumberton and the Crystal Empire earlier this summer. They wanted us to change the train schedule so the number 12 would run more frequently. I'm suddenly wishing we had to agree to the request. Don't worry. I'm sure the train will be back to pick us up before we know it, Twilight assured. Words that made Kate smile approvingly at her sister-in-law. That's very calm and collected of you, Twilight. I'm surprised you aren't panicking a bit more. Well, I did have to deal with a magic-consuming centaur. This rock kind of pales in comparison to that, Twilight said as she wrapped one of the sandwiches in a levitation spell and brought it close to her mouth. Besides, I'm sure your royal guards will be back to pick us up in no time. Last Sentry walked with a small squad of 4 toward the train station. It was a bright, beautiful day in the Crystal Empire. Just about every gem was gleaming beneath a clear blue sky, and a smile on almost every face. It was the kind of day that gave the Crystal Heart an extra kick of power, which in turn made every pony feel better. The squad was pulling the royal carriage, mission simply to pick up Shining Armor and Princess Cadance from the train station. It'll be nice to have the princess and prince back in the Empire. Flash nodded, though he kept his eyes on the road instead of looking at his squad mate, Lavis Lamps. Yeah, it will. The whole Empire brightened up when we got word yesterday they'd be returning. You know what I heard? Princess Twilight and her family might be coming with them. Well, you hear that?
Flash asked as they passed beneath the crystalline archway that marked the edge of the Empire. They were very close to the train station now, and as they hoped, it looked like the train hadn't arrived yet. I heard it from a messenger of Pegasus and Canterlot. Lapis Lance answered. He was hid to just Flash's right, and while the other two squad members, Gem, Shield, and Arden, were right behind him. So he was flying out here with some royal letters from Princess Celestia, as he flew over another train there. She says he saw Princess Twilight, Spike the Brave and Glorious, as well as Nyx boarding the royal train car for Prince Armor and Princess Cadence. Wish you wish you told us that sooner. My cult would be so disappointed if he heard I met the great and honorable Spike, the brave and glorious, did get his autograph. Arden cursed out his breath. Maybe I could pick up something from the train station gift shop and have him sign that. Flash shook his head as the squad reached the front of the station, began to unhitch themselves from the royal chariot. Don't know why you understand why all you were so Spike like that. Not saying he didn't play a big role in Sombra's defeat, but he wouldn't have been able to deliver the crystal heart to Cadence if Twilight hadn't found it. Yes, but Spike the Brave and Glorious ran headlong into Sombra's assault, Arden said, a smile going on his face. I was standing in the crowd that day. He leapt up and bounded across the glowing by crystal. I almost compare it to an ice skier, gracefully gliding across a pond. He dipped and dove, zigged and zagged. He did it all to bring back our precious relic. But, oh, the tragedy when he slipped. He went tumbling down towards King Sombra, who was rising like a dark tidal wave to meet him. But even then, when faced with that looked to be certain doom, Spike was reaching for the crystal heart. Sombra could only take the crystal heart if he pulled it from the great and honorable Spike's cold dead claws. I just guess you had to be there, Flash said, before turning his head towards the sound of the train whistle. He and his fellow guards reached the station's platform, and now watched the other onlookers as the train came tumbling to the station. But as the train slowed to a stop, a pang of panic began to grow in the pit of Flash Sentry's stomach. Where's the royal train car? Could we have stopped the wrong train? Clamsealed asked. No. You were supposed to be on the number 12 for Canterlot. This is the number 12 for Canterlot. The royal card should be attached to it. Maybe something changed the plan? Flash shook his head. No. That Pegasus messenger says he saw them getting on the train. Something's wrong. We need to talk to the conductor. Does anybody see her? Jensiel raised a huff and pointed towards the front of the train. She's over there. Without a moment's hesitation, the 4 guards rushed over to the conductor, who was helping some passengers disembark the train. The stomping of hooves made the crystal mare turn around, but the momentary panic calmed when she saw who it was.
Oh, good afternoon. Is there something I can help you with?
Where's the royal car? Arden asked. She laughed a little.
Why, it's the back of the train, the last car we hitched.
No, it isn't. The conductor looked at them confused, then took a few steps from the train so she could see down its length. The color and glimmer of her crystal coat totally faded when the dreadful realization hit her.
It should be there!
Where are the guards that were supposed to be accompanying the princesses and prince? Flash asked.
Oh, yeah.
In the baggage car.
In the last baggage car at the end of the train. We carved out a little space for them so they could be as close to the royal car as possible.
That was all the direction Flash needed. He turned and galloped toward the end of the train, his squad and the conductor following in his wake. The other ponies on the platform were growing curious, looking on while whispering to one another. Flash and the other guards, however, took no notice of them and rushed inside the last baggage car. There, they found their fellow soldiers sprawled out on the floor. There were holes in the ceiling of the wooden car, and the floor was littered with small stones. Arden rushed ahead of the rest of the squad, bending over and checking the life signs of their comrades. They're still alive, but out cold. Were they attacked? Gemshield asked, as he moved beneath the holes in the ceiling. Were Princess Celestia and Cadence and Prince Armor kidnapped?
Kidnapped? The princess was kidnapped? On my train?
The conductor's color faded so much, he thinks he was staring down King Sombra. Her breathing was labored. She was easy on her hurrows. Flash could tell she was going to happen, but before he could turn to calm the mare, she was gone. She was out the door of the baggage car, screaming at the top of her lungs for every pony in the station to hear, "The Crystal Princess has been kidnapped!" Jensiel, you have a big mouth sometimes. Flash snapped as he began to trot toward the door. You 3 stay here and try to wake these ponies up.
I gotta fly back to the palace and tell Commander Quartz what happened here before you have a mass panic on his far hooves.
Gem Shield, Lapis Lance, and Ard all nodded. Quickly he circled the fallen comrades, while Flash Sentry spread his wings and took flight. This was a rare moment. He was thankful that the majority of Crystal Ponies didn't have wings. He got ahead of the panic that was stirring up at the train station, and, with the rest of the Empire's Royal Guard, hopefully stop a public panic. Because if a panic started, then the Crystal Heart's effects would weaken. If that happened, then the ponies would weaken more, and before they knew it, half of the Empire would descend into mass hysteria. It was a cycle of emotion, one that worked to the Empire's benefit when every pony was feeling good. But in a situation like this, trying to stop the panic from spreading was like trying to stop a dam from breaking. They had to stop the flood before it started. Near the highest peak of Rainbow Range, a single citadel danced on the mountain winds. It turned and swirled, floating up and down in the air before finally coming to a delicate landing on the very tip of the peak. There it lingered, just a moment, before it sprouted. Small tendrils of life grew quickly, splitting the stone of the mountain to form roots. The green plant grew brown and became sheathed in bark, as if a tree was intending to conquer the mountain with its mere presence. Yet no tree grew from the ceiling. Instead, the roots formed into a table, large and squared, varnished with deep warm color. The table took shape as a familiar creature came riding closer on a scooter, forward from a flock of ducks. Ducks? What? Discord brought the scooter to a stop and stopped off. And the moment he let go, the ducks were freed from his magic and went honking off into a panic. Discord, however, paid him no mind as he slumped off a shoulder bag and began to rummage around the interior. Let's see, what do I need first? Oh, but of course, the map. He tossed a carefully folded piece of paper over his shoulder while continuing to rummage in the bag. The paper landed on the table and immediately began to unfold to finely polished surface. Inch by inch, it revealed itself to be a detailed map of the Rainbow Range, with the highest peak as the central landmark. Ah, here it is. Discard withdrew a small cloth sack from his bag, and opened it gingerly before placing its contents on the table. One by one, little pony figurines took their place on the map, each one appearing to be lovingly carved and planted. The ponies they depicted were the ones Discord knew quite well, even if he had taken some liberties with their likenesses. We have Shining Armor, the Crystal Paladin, Discord said as he placed the first statue. Was depicted shining armor and a suit of full-plate mail, and sporting the Empire flag. He then set down the figurine, resembling Twilight, in long, bright blue wizard robes, and a beard with the same coloring as her mane. Oh, and our very experienced wizard, Twilight Sparkle. Discord withdrew another carving. Turning around his claws, he snickered. It showed Cadence with a very regal dress. She was laying across the couch, looking even more pregnant as he really was. We have our pregnant princess. Not really a playful cast, but some ponies just don't know how to prepare for an adventure. Oh, and we can't forget about our low-level tag-alongs. I made new character sheets just for you! Discord set out two more statues. One was Spike, dressed with a froofy costume he wore for heartswarming, and carrying a guitar. The other was Nyx, who was in dark red robes and looked to be a few psychices too big. Spike the Bard, a raiser of spirits, an occasional hero of the journey. Then there is Nyx, our warlock. Yes, I know, dear, you're not the evil type anymore. But the group already has a wizard. Besides, at your level, you're just tagging along to soak up experience. Well, actually, since she's wearing red, that would make her a red mage. You know, skilled at both black magic and white magic, which means she can heal you and then blast you again after she's done healing you. So essentially, she's Josuke. Only the JoJo fans will get that joke. My apologies. Discord turned the fabric sack, emptying its remaining contents of the table just off the edge of the map. There were numerous other figurines of different creatures, ranging from cute and harmless to horrifying and deadly. There were also numerous dice with differing side counts, including one that, to the naked eye, looked perfectly spherical. Oh, I do love using my special skills to help a friend in need. Even being allowed to have such fun at the same time is an added benefit. Still, what kind of master of the universe would I be if I left the players of my little game sitting on their rumps in the forest? Discord picked up a spherical die, rolling around his palm a moment before dropping on the table. So, after being cut off for the rest of the train by a rock slide, you're a party, you cowards! Discard paused, watching the spear roll to a stop on the map. He then leaned in with a magnifying glass, revealing the spear was actually a die with tens of thousands of sides. Oh, of course! Discord, it would be a cheating DM, wouldn't he? He managed to focus in on the number that was the highest point of the die. Couldn't help but smile as he leaned back. Oh, Twilight, you and your family are going to have fun with this one, Discord said. He set the magnifying glass down, and, from his pile of creature statues, began to set a dozen similar-looking creatures all around the 5 figurines. It represented his little adventures. Let the game begin!